Hey everybody, Jeremy Siskind here. I'm the author of this beautiful book, Playing Solo Jazz Piano. I'll gladly send you a copy if you order one at jeremysiskind.com. And today I want to do a bit of a deep dive into rhythm changes. Not particularly about solo piano, just how to improvise over rhythm changes. This is something that all jazz pianists are kind of expected to be able to do. It's usually kind of thought of as a challenge in the jazz world, that you play rhythm changes at a blazing fast tempo. If you're not familiar with what rhythm changes are, these are based on the chord changes of George Gershwin's I Got Rhythms, and it spawned all of these different other tunes. Some of the most famous are Oleo, Anthropology, Dexterity, Rhythmening by Thelonious Monk. There's tons and tons and tons of rhythm changes. It's usually done, although not always, in B flat. And I'm going to play a little bit, and then we're going to dive into some strategies to improvise over the A section. So here's a little bit of rhythm changes for you. It's not going to be blazing fast, but I'll play at a medium tempo. Alright, so let's get into it. Actually, I'm going to make the iPad a little bit bigger for you. There you go. So let's talk about the first four measures first. We're going to divide it up. We're going to talk about the first four measures and then the second set of four measures. And so the first four measures, what we're essentially doing is we're doing a little bit of a cycle around the tonic chord. So the most traditional way to do it is this 1-6-2-5 progression. And I think one of the reasons that rhythm changes is so important and beloved, and it's kind of this tool to cut your teeth in jazz, is that we see this 1-6-2-5 progression so many other places. This is a really common progression in jazz. I mean, it's basically the heart and soul progression, right? But you see it in tunes like Let's Fall in Love, like Cheek to Cheek, like I Could Write a Book. And I'm sure if I were a better teacher, I'd be able to go on and name more and more tunes with this 1-6-2-5 progression. It's just incredibly common. And one of the things that you need to know before we even talk about improvisation strategies is that people use lots of different versions of this. And there's not a right or a wrong. And within the same tune, within the same solo, you might hear somebody using lots of different versions. So one thing that we can do is we can replace all of these chords, maybe not the one chord, with dominant chords. So instead of G minor 7, we'll have G dominant 7, C7, F7. And this gives you a lot more possibilities. So listen, here's the original 1-6-2-5. And here it is with dominant chords. And you can replace just some of them with dominant chords. So it could be, B flat major to G7 to C minor to F7. So it doesn't have to be that. It's all or nothing on the dominant chords. Another common move is, I'll show you in red, for this B flat major 7, we'll often use the 3 chord instead. And that could be either D minor 7 or it could be a D dominant 7. So again, we're kind of replacing everything with dominant. So that minor 3, it might be. So that's kind of an interesting sound. And then a common move is then, since we're connecting, let's say we're connecting a D minor 7 into a C minor 7, we might connect that by half steps. That's a C sharp minor 7. I know it's a little sloppy to read, so it could be. So that's a really nice little substitution that you could use in there. Okay, so that's the first thing to note, is that there's multiple different versions of this 1-6-2-5. Okay, now moving from there, I have kind of 3 main ways that you can improvise over this progression. And the first is diatonic. If you guys know that word, it's a fancy word for just using the major scale. And this is actually a great place to just make some melodies using the major scale. Just to be extra clear, when I say the major scale, here we're in the key of B flat, so I'm using the B flat major scale. And here, I'm mostly not thinking about the individual chords. I'm just thinking about making some kind of a really memorable melody. It could be something even a little bit sing-songy. Against the major scale. You can even think of the original melody to Oleo. Right? Until we get to that little half step, it's all just diatonic B flat. So I could play. You know, these really singable melodies using the B flat major scale. And that's, to me, that's option 1. Okay. Second option is to use the blues scale. Okay, I know some people talk about the minor blues scale versus the major blues scale. I don't love that lingo, but I'd be talking about the minor blues scale if you like to think that way. So it's this blues scale. And the blues scale, I made a video about this a little while back, but it works over a 1-6-2-5 progression. Definitely a good option. So you got your major scale, you got your blues scale, but then of course option 3 is you can actually play all the changes. And I think one of the reasons that rhythm changes is seen as difficult is that the changes come at you pretty fast, especially if you've got a fast tempo, you've only got 2 beats per chord. So some exercises, you know, I love having my students, and for myself, playing arpeggios in close position. So I'll show you what that would look like here on the staff. Just got to do a little erasing so I have some room. Cool. Thrilling YouTube content, watching me erase. So I'm going to start with a 3-5-7-9 arpeggio. I've probably said this on this channel before, but if not, 3-5-7-9 is really the most common useful arpeggio in bebop, I think. So it's usually my go-to starting place. And then what we can do is I'm going to find the very closest position for this G minor, right? So notice that the D remains the same, the F remains the same, the A remains the same. All that changes is that B flat. And so that ends up being, I guess, 5, 7, 9, 3. And I haven't really thought about, oh, I want to use a 5, 7, 9, 3 arpeggio. I just thought I want to find the closest arpeggio. And then the good news is that's going to lead very beautifully into another 3, 5, 7, 9. And then for the F7, again, I'm just going to look for the closest stuff. And here we'll use, let's see, 3, 5. Nope, that's not a third. I'm a smart person, and that's not a fifth. 7, 9, 3, and then 13. So let's hear how this sounds together. Not bad. And then the next thing I would do is I would practice connecting them by reversing every other arpeggio. So I'm going to play the B flat major 7 arpeggio up, the G minor 7 arpeggio down, C minor up, D natural's repeating here. So what I'll probably do is I'll add a flat 13th. I'm going to make it a D flat. It's a legal move. It's a dominant chord. I can add an alter tone. And my ear really wants with that flat 13th, it wants a flat 9. Okay? So let's hear it. So very nice exercise. And then you can also practice starting going down. Half-step connection between the lowest two notes. So you can hear I haven't practiced that one as much, but that's really worthwhile to practice as well. You might have to, just like we did with that flat 13th and flat 9th, you might have to change a couple of things as you go. Cool. So that's one possible little arpeggio exercise. And then you could start the B flat major 7 from the 5th and do the same thing. And then start from the 7th. You know, and find some up and down arpeggios that you can practice through the rhythm changes. Now this kind of relates to the next way that I would practice playing all the changes. And maybe I'll try to stuff it in right on this line here. I'll zoom in a little bit for you so you can really see it, which is that I try to find guide tone lines that will voice lead through really nicely. And so let's pretend I have B flat major, G7, C minor, F7. So I might do something like, so when I say guide tone lines, I know when some people talk about guide tone lines, they talk exclusively about the 3rd and the 7th. When I think about guide tone lines, I just want to find stepwise connections between chords. Half steps work best, but whole steps are okay too. So for example, if I start on this C, which is the 9th, I could go down to B natural, which is the 3rd, to B flat, which is the 7th, to A, which is the 3rd. Right? And then, put on a timer for 5 minutes and practice improvising different things, focusing on those 4 notes. Can you hear it? Possibility, but let's try some other possibilities. What about if we did A, that's the 7th, that goes down beautifully to the flat 9th, that leads to the 5th, that leads to the flat 9th. Did I do that right? I think I did it right. So tired of them because that's when they'll show up as habit. And you can keep going. You can keep creating these beautiful half-step connections. You can do, let's see, I'll just use black now. If I start on the 5th, goes to the 13th, goes to the 3rd, I'd probably stay on the 7th. Better if it goes to the flat 13th, goes to the 7th, goes to the flat 13th. Because that's how you're going to make really nice, smooth connections between chords. Now, of course, these are some specific ideas. It doesn't replace also practicing starting all 3, 5, 7, 9 arpeggios. And I do like to play a game, and I've probably showed this somewhere else on the channel, but I like to play a game where you have to hit the third of each chord. And I would definitely, if you're trying to hit all of these changes, I would practice focusing on the third of the chord. So, that's really valuable too. So there's no end of work to be done on these first 4 measures and really mastering them. And if you get this 1, 6, 2, 5 progression, not only is it in rhythm changes, not only is it in all these tunes, but this is one of our most common introductions that we might play as pianists. We might play. Classic introduction, sets up the key super well. So there's no shortage of reasons to practice this progression. Now, the second 4 measures is a weird progression, and I think this is actually the hardest part of rhythm changes. And you'll see a lot of different versions, and I'll go over some different versions with you. But it's something like this. So it's a 5 of 4. So the B flat 7 is leading to E flat. A step up. And usually rhythm changes have a first and a second ending, and in the second ending you'll have a very quick progression. Right, that's really fast. C, F, B flat. So that's one other challenge. So yeah, what's important here, and this is what I've learned over the years, is that there's 2 interlocking melodies that are kind of at the center of this progression. Because it's a very weird and specific progression. Okay, and I believe that it's really those 2 melodies that are making up this this second 4 measures of rhythm changes. And it's 2 lines moving logically from the root to the 5th. One's moving down, one's moving up. You might have heard the bottom one referred to as the walk-up before. You hear this in lots of different kinds of music. And by the way, it's not necessarily that the bottom one's on bottom and the top one's on top. It could be that the walk-up is here and the walk down is on bottom. And I'm going to show you what chord symbols we would use for each of these. So first of all, sometimes you'll have indicated B flat 7 over D, B flat, E diminished. Sometimes instead, well, I'll save that for a second. So if you're gonna have the walk down on bottom, you have B flat 7 over A flat, then E flat over G, then it can be G flat 7, I guess it just is G flat 7, and then you'd arrive at the same B flat over F. So these are 2 different paths that get you the same place, get you very similar results. So I treat them essentially the same way. I'm not really concerned about whether the chart says the bottom thing or the top thing. Now, some other variations that you might see, fun times, I know there's so many variations. It could be that you have a 2-5 to 4. So instead of, it could be, and then sometimes instead of going to the 4 chord as such, you might have E flat minor 7 to A flat 7, and then you'd have like D minor 7 to G7. So it could be. So there's a lot of different ways to navigate through this. And so the first thing that I'd say, and might be the last thing that I say about improvising over this section, is to use these two lines, the walk up, and I didn't label this, I'll label it in blue to match, and the walk down. So, right, that's that walk down. You can hear that it sounds really typical. Or the walk up. So those two lines are really going to help you. Now the blues scale still works really nicely here. So don't be afraid of continuing with the blues scale. Can I talk and write? So your blues scale is really your one ticket through the entire A section of the progression. So that's probably my best tip in terms of this progression. Use those two devices. You'll notice that when I, as a solo pianist, when I play one with my right hand, I'm playing the other with my left hand, because it sounds kind of stupid to go. It's very redundant to play both together. So, if it's just you making the bass line and the solo, try to have your lines going in opposite directions. Use one for one hand and one for the other. All right, I think that's going to do it for this deep dive on rhythm changes today. I hope that you enjoyed that. And I'm going to plug my book one more time. It's called Playing Solo Jazz Piano. Wait, here comes the great camera angle. There you go. It's called Playing Solo Jazz Piano. Visit me on my website, jeremysiskind.com. Like, subscribe, comment. It all helps. And I'll see you around soon. Bye-bye.